Jonathan Carrington was the kind of man who never seemed to falter, a billionaire whose sharp mind and relentless drive had built an empire that spanned technology, real estate, and international trade. To the public he was a symbol of strength, a man whose every move shaped markets and made headlines, but on a crisp Monday morning, while leading a board meeting in his towering glass skyscraper in Manhattan, something shocking happened. His words slowed, his hand trembled as he reached for a glass of water, and before anyone could react, he collapsed onto the conference table, sending panic through the room. Assistants screamed, board members rushed to his side, and within minutes, paramedics were carrying him down the marble lobby to a waiting ambulance, sirens wailing through the city streets as news began to ripple across the financial world. At the hospital, Jonathan was placed in a private suite with the best equipment and surrounded by 20 of the most celebrated doctors in the world. Neurologists flew in from Germany, cardiologists from Switzerland, and leading immunologists from Boston, all determined to solve the mystery of his sudden collapse. Yet, despite countless scans, blood tests, and endless debates in medical jargon, none of them could pinpoint the cause of his condition. His heart was strong, his brain showed no clots or bleeds, and his organs were functioning normally, yet he remained unconscious, hovering in a strange limbo between life and death. The media speculated wildly, was it stress, an unknown virus, or even a secret illness he had hidden for years? While inside the hospital, his family began to circle like vultures, his estranged children arguing over business decisions, lawyers whispering about succession plans, and investors pulling their money from projects, fearful the empire would crumble without its leader. Amid this chaos, there was one figure who moved quietly, almost invisible to everyone else, Evelyn, Jonathan's longtime housekeeper. For more than a decade, she had lived in the shadows of his vast estate, tending to his clothes, polishing his shoes, and preparing his favorite tea at night. To outsiders she was a servant, but to Jonathan she was part of the rhythm of his life, a steady presence he trusted without question. Each evening after finishing her duties at the mansion, she came to the hospital, sitting quietly by his bedside, smoothing the sheets and whispering prayers in a soft voice that seemed to calm the storm around him. While the doctors argued over data and theories, Evelyn noticed small details, how his fingers twitched when certain perfumes filled the air, the faint rash on his neck that grew worse after specific meals, the way his breathing shifted when fresh linens were brought in. She had no medical degree, no prestigious title, but she knew Jonathan better than anyone else, and a deep unease stirred within her heart, a whispering instinct that told her something was terribly wrong, something all those brilliant doctors were too blinded to see. Evelyn had always believed that people's bodies told stories, even when they themselves could not speak, and as she watched Jonathan lying motionless in the sterile hospital bed, she began piecing together details the doctors had overlooked, small fragments that whispered a truth she could not yet name. She noticed the faint almond-like scent that sometimes lingered in the air when she changed his sheets, a smell that made her heart pound because it echoed a warning her grandmother had once given her in the rural South: if you smell bitter almonds where they don't belong, beware, for poison may be near. The thought terrified her, and she tried to dismiss it, reminding herself that 20 of the world's most brilliant doctors were standing just outside the door, yet her instincts pressed harder with each passing day as Jonathan's condition remained unchanged. She began paying closer attention to his meals, noticing how his skin seemed to grow paler after dinner trays were wheeled in and how a faint rash bloomed on his arms after he drank the evening tea prepared by the hospital chefs. Fear gnawed at her, but so did loyalty, for she had served this man for over a decade, knowing the rhythms of his life in ways no one else did. She knew how he preferred his shirts folded, how he never touched shellfish, how he sneezed at the faintest trace of pollen, and how he trusted only her to brew the special herbal tea that calmed his nerves after stressful days. Something was wrong, desperately wrong, and though her heart warned her of the danger, her conscience would not let her stay silent. One night, when the hospital corridors grew quiet and the doctors had retreated to their conference rooms, Evelyn slipped a few crumbs of untouched food from Jonathan's tray into a napkin and carefully tucked it into her pocket, her hands trembling as though she were committing a crime. She began collecting these little samples day after day, bits of bread, drops of tea, even swatches of pillowcase fabric where faint discolorations appeared near his mouth, and hid them in small bags she stashed inside her purse. Her fear wasn't only of being caught, it was also of being dismissed, for who would believe a housekeeper over a team of esteemed physicians? Yet as she walked the quiet hallways, she overheard his children whispering angrily in corners about power, about who would control the empire if their father never woke, and the cold calculation in their voices sent chills down her spine. The suspicion that had begun as a whisper in her heart now screamed at her. Jonathan's collapse was not natural, and someone close to him wanted him silenced. Torn between fear and duty, Evelyn decided she needed help, but not from the arrogant specialists who scoffed at anything outside their textbooks. Instead, she turned to Dr. Michael Reeves, the one physician who treated her with respect, a young internist with kind eyes and a listening heart. Nervously, she confessed what she had seen and even showed him the hidden samples she had collected, bracing herself for ridicule, but instead of dismissing her, Dr. Reeves studied the evidence with growing unease, and though it meant breaking protocol, he promised to test them quietly. When the results came back, what they revealed would shake the walls of that hospital and expose the truth 20 brilliant doctors had failed to see. The results Dr. Reeves brought back to Evelyn confirmed her worst fears: cyanide, the silent poison that crept through Jonathan's body in tiny, undetectable doses, slowly strangling his vitality without leaving obvious traces, and the realization left both of them shaken, for while 20 world-class doctors had chased exotic diagnoses and rare syndromes, the truth had been something deceptively simple, something only Evelyn's keen observation and instinct could uncover. Reeves was horrified, whispering that Jonathan wasn't dying from disease at all but was being carefully kept on the brink of death, a victim of deliberate poisoning, and together they pieced together the cruel logic. Small doses kept him alive but weakened, preventing suspicion while ensuring he never fully woke to expose the crime. The question that haunted them was why, and who would stand to gain from the billionaire's slow demise. Evelyn's mind returned to the tense conversations she had overheard in hushed corners, Jonathan's children bickering about power and control, their voices laced with greed rather than concern for their father's health, and though her stomach twisted at the thought, she began to suspect that the betrayal came from within his own bloodline. Reeves cautioned her to stay quiet, reminding her how dangerous it would be if the wrong people learned she knew the truth, so they devised a plan to gather irrefutable evidence. Evelyn continued her duties as if nothing had changed, tidying the room, fluffing pillows, and serving meals, but her eyes missed nothing. Every dish, every cup of tea, every folded napkin was scrutinized. One late evening, she lingered after the nurse left, pretending to adjust Jonathan's blanket, and from the corner of her eye she caught a faint shimmer as one of the chefs slipped into the room, placing a steaming cup of tea on the bedside table with unusual care before hurrying out. Her heart pounded as she waited until the hallway grew silent, then she quietly swapped the cup with a clean one, carefully sealing the suspicious tea in a container and rushing it to Dr. Reeves. Hours later, he confirmed what they both already knew: the tea was laced with cyanide. With undeniable proof in hand, Reeves contacted hospital security, who set up hidden cameras to monitor the food service, and within days they caught footage of the same chef tampering again. When confronted, the man broke down under pressure, revealing that he had been paid a fortune to make sure Mr. Carrington never wakes, and though he tried to shield the identity of his employer, it was soon traced back to Jonathan's eldest son, who stood to inherit the largest share of the empire if his father remained incapacitated. The revelation sent shockwaves through the hospital staff, shaking even the most cynical doctors who had prided themselves on their expertise, while Evelyn, once overlooked as merely a housekeeper, stood at the center of the storm, the one whose loyalty and courage had uncovered the hidden enemy that 20 brilliant physicians had missed. With the poison source eliminated and Jonathan's meals and drinks now monitored with meticulous care, the slow but steady reversal of his symptoms began, and over the course of several days his body seemed to reclaim its strength as if a fog was finally lifting. His skin regained its color, the rashes faded, and his breathing grew stronger until, one quiet morning, his eyelids fluttered open, and for the first time in weeks, the billionaire spoke in a hoarse whisper, asking where he was. The room erupted with relief, doctors congratulated themselves, and his children rushed to his bedside feigning joy, but Jonathan's gaze fell past all of them until it landed on Evelyn, who stood quietly in the corner, her hands clasped nervously, and with surprising clarity for a man so recently revived, he murmured, "You saved me." When Dr. Reeves gently explained what had been discovered, the betrayal etched deep lines into Jonathan's face. his own flesh and blood had plotted against him, hiring a man to poison him slowly, leaving him vulnerable and silent while they circled like vultures around his empire. Though the truth crushed him, he found solace in the fact that it had been Evelyn, the woman so often invisible in his world of wealth and power, who had refused to let him slip away. She had seen what 20 doctors had missed, driven not by science alone but by loyalty, love, and instinct born from a lifetime of watching details others dismissed. In the weeks that followed, the son responsible was arrested and stripped of his position, the empire restructured to ensure that greed would no longer be allowed to dictate its future, and Jonathan began to reconsider everything he had built, realizing that the money and power he had spent his life chasing could not protect him from betrayal, but the quiet devotion of one woman had. He summoned Evelyn to his estate once he was discharged, insisting she sit across from him at the long polished table where she had so often served others, and with a voice firm yet full of gratitude, he told her that she would never again work as a mere housekeeper, for he wanted her by his side as a trusted advisor, someone whose judgment he valued above even the highest paid consultants. Evelyn, humbled and overwhelmed, tried to protest, but Jonathan silenced her with a gentle smile, saying, "When 20 doctors could not see the truth, you did. You are the reason I am alive, and that makes you family." Word of her courage spread quietly through the city, a whispered legend of the housekeeper who saved a billionaire's life, and though Evelyn never sought recognition, she carried the knowledge with quiet pride that her instincts and loyalty had not only saved the man she served but had altered the course of an empire. Jonathan, for all his billions, understood now that his greatest treasure was not the wealth he guarded so fiercely, but the steadfast heart of the woman who refused to let him die unseen.